Your title with Cisco is Chief Globalisation Officer, which is something of an anomaly within the business world. I mean, it's kind of a unique position, really. How did that position come about?
Yes, Stuart, absolutely. That if you Google it, it makes the #1 hit because there's only one Chief Globalization Officer. And so it's been a process. Cisco has discovered emerging countries as an element of growth. We look at country transformation, position the network as the fourth utility. And so we see a big growth opportunity. But then immediately you also start saying, so how can I capture that growth in a profitable way? How can we earn some money? How can we build, I would say, sustainable relationships with customers? And we came to the conclusion that we have to think out of the box, because it's not just growth. And there's a lot of innovation going on in this side of the world that we want to tap in. And for technology companies like Cisco, we have always to look at our future talent pool. So those three elements, the growth opportunity, the innovation, and the talent, drove us to the conclusion that we had to do something substantially different. Use technology.
You were saying that you were looking at Asia as not being just a growth story, but also you're looking at the innovation aspects of the region as well.
Definitely. All opportunities in Asia are almost greenfield. And there's not a lot of installed base and legacy. And that I always say that God was able to create the world in 7 days because there was no installed base. And so India alone, adding 8 million cell phone subscribers a month, and 200 million people will be urbanized, will start living in cities, will open up a bank account. And that's the whole classic way of devaluing product and services, try to export them and perhaps localize them. We think it's fundamentally wrong. And we have to start creating product and services for this side of the world, and then perhaps, if it's relevant, export them back to the more mature world.
Now you're based in Bangalore, you moved there recently, earlier this year. What will you be doing specifically in India? And are you going to be substantially increasing workforce numbers there?
Yeah, that's the question. Why India? Because it not comes obviously to mind. But we think first of proximity. Of India, 12.5 hours away from the US. So you can rule the world 12 hours a day from corporate America, 12 hours a day out of India. And that if you draw a circle around Bangalore, a 4-hour flight, you can basically attract 70% of the world population and 70% of the future growth, the GDP growth. Next to that, that India has a free market economy, it's a democracy, it has a big talent pool, and talent is, I think, what's going to be the most differentiator in building new organizations. Where is the raw talent? Because the talent gap is getting bigger and bigger. Western Europe and the US are aging. China starts already aging. And so where is your future talent pool? And so we basically have said India is going to be a globalization center for us, teaming up with the ICT industry in India. The top tier companies at the moment like Tata, Wipro, Infosys, Satyam, HCL, those 5 companies alone are hiring 100,000 people this year. And so tapping in that export opportunity and extending our ecosystem made us decide to make more than $1.2 billion investment in India to build a globalization center that will be a hub to go through Asia, but also to Middle East and Africa.
So what specifically will the Globalization Center aim to do? What are you hoping to achieve with it?
Yeah, see it as a kitchen type of concept. And so we will have sales offices in all these new emerging countries, where we will have coverage, government relations, where you develop plans for country transformation, and you position the network as the fourth utility, but then you have to develop the product and services. You have to be able to deliver. You have to be able to build long-lasting, sustainable relationship with customers. Why should a customer out of, let's say, Malaysia or Riyadh, and not those obvious countries, spend 20 hours in a plane to meet a leadership team in California? And that's, you have to, I would call it, you have to start globalizing the corporate brain. And that is basically our whole aim out of the Globalization Center in India. Historically, globalization meant exploring new markets. And then we went in outsourcing of manufacturing. And then since 10 years now, we talk about call centers. We start now talking about globalizing the brain and being able to have more sensing for innovation and to have more decentralization of decision making. It's like 60 years ago. And if you send somebody out in a remote, you had to trust them. And a lot of companies are now in command and control. And we have to go back from command and control to what I would call collaboration, teamwork, and then of course with our technology, networking, collaboration, social networking. And we start looking at a new wave of productivity and technology enabled that can flatten the world with what I call the globalization of the corporate brain.
Well, a lot of companies, a lot of multinationals are already outsourcing to India, primarily to cut costs. Is this the main reason you'd be establishing this base within India, is basically to keep costs as low as possible?
We started, of course, in that wave of cost differentiation. At the moment, we look beyond that because we think cost and labor arbitrage are not a sustainable differentiator. And that the whole strategy is built around growth, innovation, and talent. And of course, the cost differentiation is a bonus, but it's not the main driver anymore.
Elfrink, thanks for joining us on INSEAD Knowledge.